On today's episode of the Wild Party Podcast, I chat with Maddie Hamann, co-founder of Pacha Bread. She reveals how she transitioned from oceanography to revolutionize the way we think about bread, climate, and community. Her journey from studying climate science to creating nutrient-dense, regenerative, gluten-free bread demonstrates that business can be a force for planetary healing. In this episode, Maddie uncovers the surprising connection between regenerative agriculture and your daily bread. You'll discover how sprouted buckwheat and fermentation make bread healthier, more digestible, and delicious, without any additives or preservatives. Plus, learn about the critical role of soil health in combating climate change, and how a simple crop like buckwheat supports regenerative farming practices. This isn't just a story about bread. It's a powerful movement to rebuild our land, our bodies, and our climate. If you're passionate about food, sustainability, or simply crave real tasty bread that nourishes your body and the planet, this episode is for you. Let's get the party started. Welcome to the Wild Party Podcast, where we celebrate the visionaries behind vegan, ethical, and sustainable business. In each episode, we'll dive deep into their journeys, uncovering the why behind their mission-driven business. I'm your host, Stefanie LaHart. Tune in with me for passionate discussions about overcoming challenges, innovative marketing strategies, and the power of using business as a force for good. So whether you're an entrepreneur seeking guidance or a conscious consumer wanting to support impactful brands, join us as we explore the stories behind the businesses that are changing the world for the better. Let's get the party started. Today, I am so excited to welcome to the show Maddie Hamann. She is the co-founder and director of marketing at Pacha Bread, where she is applying her extensive scientific background to drive the company's mission of promoting regenerative agriculture and sustainability. Oh, but don't you worry, listeners, it is much more delicious than it sounds. Now, Maddie holds a PhD from Scripps Institution of Oceanography, but she transitioned from the field of earth science to marketing in order to make a more direct impact on climate change through business. Now, her dedication to environmental sustainability is at the heart of Pacha's marketing strategies, and that ensures that the company's values are reflected in every aspect of the brand. Pacha creates a nutrient-dense, sprouted buckwheat bread while supporting regenerative agriculture. And we love all of those words. So today, Maddie, we're going to talk about your reinvention, your regenerative food systems, obviously your entrepreneurship, and what I always like to say, what turns an idea into action. Welcome to the show, Maddie.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
I know they were a whole lot of words. Don't worry. Editing is going to take care of that and it will sound smooth as silk. But let's get started here. Maddie, you have such an interesting background. Like, you were a girl who was primarily studying climate science and oceanography. Take me back to those early days of Maddie and what you were doing.
Yeah. So, let's see. Early, I got a degree in civil engineering at Notre Dame. I primarily did that because it was easier to switch out of engineering than into it, and then it turned out I liked it and the problem solving and everything. But about halfway through, I kind of realized I didn't want to be designing highway overpasses or like working for the city, or just like the lifestyle of a civil engineer was not what I was seeking, and that I also had a deeper desire to help humanity with climate change, which is why I then decided to go and study oceanography and work directly on like understanding the problem of climate change and what's happening out there. And I, being from the Midwest, I had pretty limited education in the climate science realm, and it took me a couple of years being at Scripps, studying oceanography to kind of realize like, wow, we know a lot. We actually know a lot. And kind of putting together that just knowing more about the problem didn't seem to be changing the way we as humans and as societies were responding to the problem. I was like, okay, there's something else there. The knowledge isn't the whole thing. And I think I also in grad school had a realization that, there are scientists who like all they think about is science. Like they're literally like 24 hours a day in science mode. And yeah, I actually have skills beyond that. I have the skills with talking to people and telling stories. And my PhD advisor always flagged me as the one to write something, like anything. He was like, "You're a writer. You should be a writer." Okay. And yeah, I met my husband towards the end of my PhD, and crazy enough, I actually I didn't learn anything about regenerative agriculture as an oceanographer. It's really like, in some ways it makes sense. I was studying oceanography, so regenerative agriculture is a land-based climate solution, but it was just really like revealing to me that that the like people are so siloed in academia. Like we study one thing and we don't talk with each other and other cross departments about some of the things that are most relevant. And yeah, so my husband actually introduced me to the concept of regenerative agriculture. And a few years later, he was looking at starting a new company that was based in regenerative agriculture and using business to drive people towards climate solutions. And I was like, all right, let's do this.
That's how it starts. We start with a conversation. We say, hey, that sounds like a great idea. We should do that. And sometimes it does end up being a great idea. And sometimes we take turns and go to things like Burning Man, which I heard that you also did.
Yeah. Yeah. I went to Burning Man actually I went one time and then I was hooked, and I went like 4 years in a row. And one of the things that I was doing when I was at Burning Man actually was creating art. And the first installation that I did was called Ocean Tunnel. And it was like a 200-foot long, basically like a bunch of greenhouses all in a row. And they had murals on the inside that showed, as you rode through it, kind of showed what the state of the open ocean ecosystems was like. So like going from like lots of fish and schools of fish all the way down to like plastic and jellyfish at the end. So I was, at that time, I was definitely exploring and like trying to feel into what is it that I'm actually meant to do with the different skills that I have. And the connection of art and science was definitely like an interesting area for me.
I love that. Okay, so just full disclosure, I have never been to Burning Man, but I am like just highly, highly impressed by people who do make that trek. Because literally, like when you go out there, you're creating an entire city from nothing. There's nothing out there, people. When you go to Burning Man, everything you see, people have brought in and created this entire, like you said, city and ecosystem and art installations. And I find that incredibly impressive. Now, will I ever go? I don't know, because I am also a prima donna. So we won't even get into my own issues. But what I wanted to bring up about with that was that the fact that, that creativity in you was there. You were building this whole idea of like, what would it be like to create this something out of nothing? So, along comes your husband and says, hey, I think we should do this regenerative farming thing. Let's go. So was that really then the seeds of launching your own brand? Or at that point where you're trying to figure out what it was you both wanted to do with that idea?
Well, okay, so I'll say one more thing about Burning Man. Burning Man, it was absolutely like pretty foundational in my development as an entrepreneur because I was doing things like running camps and doing the administrative side of a lot of things. A lot of the art projects that I did, I was more of a project manager actually than the artist, so to speak. As far as the company goes, so my husband, his name's Adam Heiner, and he is a serial entrepreneur. We like to say he's a pseudo serial entrepreneur now because he works with buckwheat and it's not a cereal. um, so anyways, he has founded multiple companies, everything from a restaurant, a catering business. His most recent endeavor was Buchcraft, which is a high alcohol organic kombucha. And he's a businessman. Like that's his whole life shtick. And at the time that we met, he was running marketing for Buchcraft, and then he hired himself out of that role, hired somebody who was, a marketing expert. And he was working in Impact, which took about like 25% of his time. And he was ready for the next thing. So the bread was based off of a recipe that was being made at the time that we met. There was a couple who was making a sunflower, buckwheat, flax seed bread. And he actually brought it to the event that we met at and shared some with me. And I hadn't been eating bread. And I was like, wow, oh my gosh, I can eat it. It's all real food. It doesn't have any weird gums or starch or it's just whole seeds. Okay. And it was so tasty. They were making it like 20 to 40 loaves a week for friends and family, kind of cottage industry. And Adam for a long time was like, you guys, this is good stuff. Like you guys could turn this into a business. I could coach you. I could help. And then around the same time that he was ramping down with his stuff at Buchcraft, they broke up. He left the country. They stopped making the bread. And we took up the torch in a way and just started making it for our own community house and for ourselves. And then people started asking us if we could make it for them and make it for their restaurants and their events. And we were like, I'm not really trying to be a cottage industry baker, but Adam was looking for another business opportunity. And it just really felt like, in a way, it felt like the world was kind of pulling it out of us. And I actually remember the moment that I said I wanted to be involved because I was in my postdoc. I was actually working for the Navy doing classified submarine research. Okay. And one day we were just in the kitchen and it kind of just erupted out of me. I was like, I want to work on the bread thing. And he was like, oh, really? I was like, yeah, actually, yes, that's true. I hadn't really put a ton of thought into it. And we were early in our relationship, and the idea of starting a company with your girlfriend can be a little bit daunting, but he was just like, yeah, I can feel that this is genuine, and also that she's a badass, so I can't say no to her.
The seed had sprouted. You were ready to grow.
Yeah, totally.
I love it. Okay, so you had mentioned that you actually were introduced to this kind of bread making by someone else, and you started doing it yourself and actually, sharing it with your community. And you had shared with me a little bit earlier that you live in a very interesting community. So do you want to tell us a little bit about where you live and what that's like?
Yeah, well, the community that I live in now is different than the one that I lived in at the time. I come from a big family, and pretty much as soon as I arrived in San Diego, I started living in community houses. So anywhere from 4 to 6 to 8 at one time, 10 people living in a house together as roommates, and also just cooking meals together and gardening together and being able to come home and just see somebody who's your friend and not have to make plans to socialize. It was just a lifestyle that I really enjoyed. And now we actually, Adam and I are married. We have a 3.5-year-old daughter, and we, about 3 years ago now, we made a transition. Now we live half time. Part of the week we live in the city, actually, with some of our co-founders of Pacha. They have a family and a business in San Diego. We live with them during the week, and then on the weekend we come out and we live in a community that has like 15 people living on a piece of land. And yeah, we cook meals together, we work on projects on the land together, and I think the best part is, again, just like having people that you love available all the time, and especially when you have a child, like having 12 trusted adults who at any time can just show up and be like, "Hey, Mina, do you want to come with me and feed the chickens or go water the plants?" Like, it's magical.
Well, I think you just solved the loneliness epidemic. All we keep hearing about is how people are so isolated and lonely. And you just solved it for us, Maddie. That's fantastic. I think that sounds like a lovely situation, especially because you've removed some of the stress, I think, that people get from their families to have that little, like, I don't know, 6 degrees of separation, maybe, where it's like, I live with you, but you're not my family, and I don't have all the loaded emotions. I don't know. I'm just internalizing it, but it sounds lovely. And it makes perfect sense, honestly, for now the business and the product that your husband and you have created, because you're really thinking about the basics. Like, let's go back to it being natural and it being simple. And, full disclosure, Maddie and her team did send me a little sample package so I could try it. And let me tell you, you're right. Entirely different flavor experience going on. Because, of course, not only is it vegan and cruelty free, but it actually tastes like real food. Oh my God. Like, we're so far removed from our food system. I've said this so many times in the past that we think certain things, like we go into, like, I don't know, your mass chain grocery store and we buy bread and it's marked all natural and it's brown, so we think it's healthy, and it all tastes the same, which means it doesn't really taste like anything. And don't even get me started on what we've done to chocolate, because chocolate, like, people don't even know what chocolate actually tastes like, right? So you've created this really beautiful organic, and this one's actually gluten-free. I'm holding up if you guys are watching online. It's
all of our products are gluten-free.
All gluten-free, these sprouted tortillas. So tell me then, what did that look like when you and your husband were like, all right, we're going to make this bread a business? What was the next step then of actually, getting it from idea into the supply chain and creating the product that you need, that you want it to put out into the world? What did that look like?
Yeah. Gosh. Well, okay. So from the beginning, we had, Adam, again, coming with his experience from Boochcraft and having a CPG brand. The intention was always to be a retail brand and like go national and be sold in grocery stores. And that was always the idea. However, we started the business on April 1st of 2020. So that's when our lease started. Woo! And in some ways that was a blessing. Just, at least we were not like just a year in and had that huge shift of COVID happen. But it was a really challenging time. A lot of the grocery stores were just dealing with, well, I mean, everyone was dealing with a lot, but grocery stores in particular were just like, okay, we just got to like try to keep the train on the track here. Like, so a lot of the reviews that typically happen in grocery, like buyers will, they're called buyers. They're the people who decide what goes on the shelf, and they just were not having reviews for their categories. They were like, we're just going to stick with what we got on the shelf and we're going to make it through this tough time. So we were having a really hard time getting the bread into grocery retail. And simultaneously, we had a friend of ours who had a lot of experience with direct-to-consumer marketing. And he was like, I this might sound weird. Like, it's a frozen bread, so it's not exactly like designed for D2C, but I think you guys have something that could work, and like maybe we should try it. And so we were like, all right, let's give it a shot. Let's see what happens if we put our bread out to the digital audience. And I really think like, yeah, our bread is just so unique. It's unique in that it only has two ingredients. It's gluten-free, it's organic, but it's just simple. And there's a lot of people in our country who have food allergies, to a lot of gluten is a main one, but also like other gluten-free breads have things like quinoa or guar gum or xanthan gum, or corn or egg or nuts. And like there's all these other allergens that get put into gluten-free bread in order to try and replicate like a white bread replacement, which our bread is not really trying to be. It's its own type style of bread. And yeah, people were just like, oh my gosh, I can eat this. And so we created a customer base across the nation. And yeah, I think we started in 2022. We started the direct to consumer. And by 2024, we were doing like 2 million a year in revenue from e-commerce. So yeah, and I think it just like goes to show that like people were and are hungry for this type of real food that they can eat.
That's just amazing, those numbers. I mean, but that just goes to show that the product is really, really good. And like I said, I loved it. I thought it was just delicious. And, for people that aren't aware, it's like having something sprouted actually makes it way healthier for you. There's so many more vitamins and things that you need in there rather than having these very overprocessed foods. So, take me back then when before you found your audience and you were developing the bread, where did you first look to start, finding your product or actually growing it? Are you growing your own seeds? I mean, how is this all coming together?
Yeah, no. So we don't do our own farming. At the time when we started, we were sourcing organic buckwheat. There's only a few mills in the country that process buckwheat, and I think there's only 2 that do organic buckwheat. So in the beginning, we were, well, actually, like I remember a few times during COVID where we were like literally going to the grocery store and buying like every bag of Bob's Red Mill buckwheat that we could find in order to like have enough, supply chain issues during COVID. Eek. But yeah, we started sourcing organic buckwheat from Mindak Mill, and a couple of years in, we met another entrepreneur who has a buckwheat brand. Her name's Emily. She owns Lil Bucks, and she was working with. We were just in the whole conversation about like, wow, we really see the potential for buckwheat to do incredible things for our farming system. I'll just give you a little background here. The buckwheat itself is sort of a regenerative crop, even if it's not on a regenerative farm, because the way it's used as a cover crop, which means that it's planted between crops in order to keep topsoil in place and like have a healthy topsoil ecosystem. So a lot of farmers who have no idea about regenerative agriculture are using buckwheat already. And most of the time they're actually not harvesting the seed from it. They're like letting it get all green, and then they're tamping it back down into the soil and planting their next crop. So there's actually a big opportunity for farmers who have space in their crop rotation to add buckwheat. If they can hold out and let the buckwheat go to seed, they can actually add a third crop to their rotation. So what we started to do was have conversations with farmers who were interested in regenerative agriculture. And we found one farmer. His name is John Strophus, and he's a organic and regenerative farmer, as well as an ingredient processor. So he actually works with a whole network of farmers to source all kinds of different grains and legumes. But he was our first farmer that we contracted with directly, and I think that was back in 2022. And so since then, we've moved 100% of our buckwheat. Actually, I shouldn't say 100%. We still do have I think a small contract with Mindac that's just like that's there for redundancy, like so that we have multiple sources. But it's like 95% of our buckwheat or something is coming directly from farmers that we contract with through John. He's the one who goes out and talks to those farmers and tells them all about buckwheat and is like, you should really add it. It's easy. You can make more money off your fields. Like, it's a great idea. And it's so powerful to have a farmer that's helping us do that, because when you talk to farmers as a brand owner, they're like, what do you know about farming? You're just like a business person, and I don't care.
And Maddie, before we get too farther into the conversation, explain to people what regenerative farming is and why it's important.
Yeah. So regenerative farming is, at its essence, it's farming that is like the primary objective. It's not actually the primary objective, but to do it right, you are focusing on taking care of your soil and your soil ecosystem and your ecosystem as a whole. So basically, the practices are meant to help build like really healthy, vibrant topsoil and build a lot of it. Because what happens is when you have healthy topsoil, you have all of the microorganisms, the nematodes and the fungi, the mycelial networks and the microbes, that those are the things that are actually able to take nutrients and pass them to the roots of the plant and grow a really healthy plant. So like, yeah, you can, and you can imagine the difference between like a really healthy, like black soil that new potting soil, for example, and you can see it's got all this like spongy vibrancy versus like a field that's kind of been tilled a bunch of times and it's more like dirt. Another thing that happens in regenerative agriculture is that because you have that really healthy topsoil, you're able to retain water in the soil. You can imagine trying to pour water onto that dirt versus pouring it into your new potting soil, right? It's like sponge versus mudslide. And yeah, so the regenerative agriculture just has all of these benefits that allow, or that the principle is to work in relationship with the natural systems in order for plants to be healthy and vibrant and resilient, by having like a more biodiverse ecosystem. What happens a lot in industrial, like traditional, I'll call it traditional, but industrial agriculture is you have like one field that's got the same thing through the whole field. Sometimes that plant is actually like one set of genetics, like it's a genetically modified organism that's the same through the whole field. So you get a fungus or a blight of some kind that starts to come into the field, and it can just take everything out like super easily. Whereas in a regenerative system, your focus is on building a biodiverse ecosystem. That means that, you get one plant with a fungus over here, but there's all of these other critters and microorganisms that are there that actually can help kind of keep that in balance, keep it checked, and just building resiliency through diversity.
And that is so important. And as a child of history as I am, and I say child of history, it just means I'm watching a ton of documentaries. I just so happened to have just watched an FDR documentary because he was the president through the Great Depression, and specifically when we were having things called the Dust Bowl happening in the Midwest. And for people that aren't aware, please go Google the Dirty 30s and you'll see what I'm talking about. And it was exactly that was happening, that they were over farming the soil. There was no regenerative processes in place. And all of a sudden, soil's depleted. We have a drought, and literally nothing could grow. And it was a gigantic dust storm. And we look at history and we say, oh, we can't get into those situations like that again, which really brings us to the rise of things like regenerative farming and why it is so important, because you can't keep depleting one area without really thinking about, well, how do we also build it up? So when we see, brands like yours and products that are really thinking about the life cycle of like not just where we are sourcing our ingredients, but what are we doing to make sure that that land is still, able to produce more or, better, sustainability for future generations is so important. Because back in the day, we didn't think about that. It was really just like, hey, we're making money on this and the government's supporting it. And next thing you know, Great Depression, everybody's starving to death and there's nothing we can do, right? So if you guys haven't looked up that, please go do a deep documentary search like I am doing now. Really learn your history because it is fascinating. And it also makes you realize like, hey, people like Maddie are really solving problems that we don't want to get into again. So with
Yeah.
that said, also making it super tasty. So thanks for
Yeah.
that, because we both know if it doesn't taste good, people are like, it's okay. I don't really care about the soil anyway. It'll be fine. Give me something processed. But let's talk about this sourdough specifically. Why did you decide that you were going to go with a sourdough base? Because sourdough is still having its moment even before, I'm going to say, the pandemic. Like everybody's doing
Yeah.
sourdough starters and stuff. What is it about sourdough that just makes everybody go, yes, that is delicious?
Yeah, I mean, gosh, well, what is it that makes everyone go, yes, that is delicious? I think that your body can just like there is the flavor profile, of course. It's like a little bit sour, a little bit of umami, and like, but also I think your body can just tell when you put it in your mouth that like, oh, this is better for me. And yeah, sourdough is magical. Basically, you already mentioned the sprouting process. So we use whole buckwheat seeds that we sprout to make our bread, which that adds a layer of digestibility to it. But the sourdough adds another layer of digestibility to the product. So um, when things are made into sourdough, they're actually allowed to ferment with cultures of yeast, and the yeast transform simple like starches in the bread into more complex carbohydrates and acid. That what gives it the sour taste. So they're actually pre-digesting your bread for you.
Because your
So
bread is actually alive, which is why it has to
yeah,
be frozen, right? And refrigerated. And people
yes,
aren't used to that. They're used to everything being on the shelf stable forever,
yeah,
which is scary. It's very
yeah,
scary. It's like, no, things should not be able to live on a shelf for 10 years.
yeah,
That is cardboard. That is cardboard, people. So getting your bread, I think, from your freezer or refrigerator, I believe is a much healthier thing. I personally loves to get my bread at my local farmer's market because it is freshly baked that day. And you know what? I do come home, slice it down, put it right in the freezer anyway, because I'm like, I can't just like leave it out. It will get moldy. There's no preservatives, people. It's
yeah,
supposed to. It's growing. It's still alive. And I think that's very important that people start connecting the fact that, your food being alive still is a good thing, like refrigerate it. And we're not talking about animals. We're not refrigerating animals when they're alive, nor are we eating them. This is a vegan podcast. Okay. Changing the scope here then. With a product like this, are you finding that you have to do a lot more education to your audience? Or are people already kind of aware because it's been more in the community conversation now about, having more whole foods available to us? Like how much education are you finding that you have to do with your product?
yeah. I mean, it's an interesting question because it like in the early days of our, like in the earlier years of our strategy, like we absolutely were leaning on to, okay, like what are the things that people already know about that they're searching for? Leading with just 2 ingredients was like, and still is one of the most powerful levers that we have to operate on. So yes, people like there already being an awareness of ingredient, like wanting your ingredient label to be short and simple. Like that's very important for um, how we've been able to grow. I would say at the same time, yes, there is education, especially in the realm of like around digestibility, because again, like we do really well with people who are like, I can't eat anything else. Like I can't eat gluten, I can't eat eggs, I can't eat any of this other stuff. So like this is my option. And oh, great, it tastes good. I'm actually excited about this. Um on the other hand though, like there is a piece to educate people on just like you might be able to eat regular regular sourdough bread. You might be able to eat gluten, but you may not be realizing that like the low level of inflammation that is actually causing in your body. And like I think a lot of people are not aware that like their chronic fatigue or their like brain fog or things like that can actually be associated with the things that you're eating. Um and and also I mean I think again, similarly, people may not even recognize that they are having digestive issues that are related to their food. So yeah, this piece that's around like, you know what, I give this bread a try because it's going to feel really good in your body. And if you try it for a week, like you might notice that you've never felt better. And like might start to realize like this is all connected to the way that I eat. So yeah, there's a piece there, and we are definitely moving into a phase of really leaning into the digestibility of our bread. It's just like it's unmatched. Like everyone who eats our product feels amazing. They're like, oh yeah, other breads, especially other gluten-free breads, will just kind of like sit in my stomach for a while, and I can kind of feel this like heaviness. It's from the starch. Like the gluten-free breads use starches in order to mimic white bread. But Pacha is just real food that's been sprouted and fermented, and it's just like it's magical.
It's funny that you describe it like that because I will let you know I was one of those gluten skeptics because I'm not gluten free. I don't search out for products like that. So when I was originally introduced to Pacha, I was kind of like, it's going to be like eating lead, like just sitting in your stomach, right? But you know, your team sent me the package, and actually, I was with one of my friends, and she was very excited about it. And she doesn't specifically have to be gluten free, but she's like, "Oh no, I want to try this. This looks really good." So I actually made her try it first. I
Nice.
was like, well, here, you try it, and let me know what you think. And she's like, oh my God, this is really good. And I was like, are you just messing with me? She's like, no. And then I tried it. Like we got the English muffins, the sourdough muffins, and the tortillas. And it says on the package, you know, toast them for the best experience. So we did. And I ate it and I was like, oh my God, this like melts in your mouth. It's so delicious. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I was a skeptic, and then I was like, this is really, really good. And then I'm like, well, why is this so much better? But you just kind of explained it, that they're using these starches to mimic that other feeling, I guess, of regular processed bread. And that's really where the problem was. But the Pacha bread really is so smooth and yummy and melts in your mouth. And like, I didn't feel tired. I didn't feel like cranky afterwards. And I felt
Yeah.
full, which is the other thing about bread, in a lot of ways, people try to stay away from it because they feel like it's just a filler. It doesn't really like add anything. And this really, I felt like I ate something substantial and healthy, and I felt good. And I
Yeah.
was really amazed. And I was like, oh God, this is really good. Like, we need to get more people to understand that this is what real food tastes like. So you had mentioned earlier that you have a really strong digital following already. You guys are very active in Instagram and things like that. So tell me a little bit about your storytelling process on the social medias that you find is really resonating with people. Like, what are they looking for? Is it the buzzword of gluten-free, or are they looking for things that are, more filling nutritionally, or like what's really resonating with people when they're finding you online?
Yeah, I would say that really the place that people are finding us is um when it's kind of the conversation we're having right now, when people they trust, a lot of like micro influencers, like the most impactful stuff we've done online is micro influencers sharing about their experience with, like, oh, this bread tastes really good, and oh, it feels really good in my body. um in terms of like the ads that we have run, yeah, again, it's like when we get people's faces in the ads and talking about like how simple the bread is and how good the bread feels, and the fact that their kids will eat it.
Mm.
um all those things are like, those are our top connection points for sure.
Okay,
I
so then
also just want to say, I just want to, like, for your audience, because I know this is a vegan podcast. Fun fact: buckwheat is one of the only sources of like complete plant-based protein. So that, like, you were feeling full for a while, it's because buckwheat is quite high in protein and also a really good source of magnesium, which most people are deficient in.
wow, I didn't even know that about the protein content. That's
Yeah,
delicious and that's wonderful. I love that. That's great.
yeah,
But most importantly, we all know that we eat with our eyes before our stomachs. So your packaging really nails it as far as like feeling like something that I want to try. How involved were you in the actual packaging of it? I'm holding it up if you guys are watching on YouTube, because
yeah,
it makes you want to try the product.
yeah. I mean, I was very involved. I chose that. I chose that design from the whole, we did a whole packaging mock-up redesign, rebrand thing. But
Is the blue
yeah,
supposed to be symbolic of like the regenerative nature? Like you got like the half semicircle there, or what is happening there on the packaging?
the
The
bullseye, I mean,
bullseye.
that's the we wanted to have an element on the packaging that would indicate the flavor. So the blue is like the original. Um, and the yellow part of the packaging, that's if you look at our bread, which is we have bread, English muffins, and tortillas. Our bread and English muffins are usually on the shelf together. And so
Hmm.
it's like this yellow block that really like stands out. And then the different colors indicate the flavor. Um, but yeah, when I saw the packaging, I was like, this just feels like, it feels like our brand. It feels like, inviting and playful, and yeah, like just something that you want to give it a try because it's going to feel good, like feel good packaging.
I think that's a good way to describe it. It's very inviting, it's very approachable, and it does feel like fun. And that's
Yeah.
one of the things I saw. I was like, wow, this just feels like something if I just saw it on the shelf in the refrigerator section of my grocery store, of course. I'd be like, what is that? Because you're right, with the bright yellow, it really does stand out.
Yeah.
And it kind of catches your eye and makes, hey, what is that? What is that about? So but again, just once we get to the packaging, opening up the product, then the smell of it was just so amazing. I was like, ooh, this just feels and sounds really, really good. So, with all of that said, you and your husband had this background, and then decide we're going to launch into the product specter. Now that you've done it, looking back, tell me one thing that came up that you weren't expecting and how you got through it. Okay. And then maybe let's do the one, I don't want to say negative, but the one challenge that came up, how did you handle it? And then the one surprise that happened that you were like, oh, this is awesome, that you didn't know was coming. So let's do kind of a
Yeah.
high and a low.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, like what comes up for me again was like the challenge of the early years and like trying to get our bread into grocery stores. One of the things that we in the very beginning, we didn't have enough volume. We weren't big enough to buy a slicer for our bread that was like able to stand up to what our bread actually is, because it's not like a super easy to slice white bread. It's a bit more dense than that. And yeah, so we were having like nobody was taking our bread onto the retail shelf. There was like a handful of chains in Southern California that were like, this checks all the boxes of everything that we're looking for, so we're going to bring it in. But people were really having a hard time with the format. It was frozen. It was like this whole loaf of bread. Yeah, and eventually what we did was we started hand slicing. Adam would go in and like make perfect slices as if it were done by a machine. And that's what we would send out to the grocery buyers. And finally, like someone bit and yeah. And then we were like, okay, and now we have to buy a slicer like tomorrow. Let's figure that out.
I love that it was hand slicing. Talk about being like homemade. I mean, hand sliced by the co-founder. That's great.
Yeah.
And maybe we come over and toast it for you. I don't know. Okay. So what stores are you available in now?
Yeah, so you can find our bread and English muffins nationwide at Whole Foods and Sprouts, and natural grocers. We're in a few regions of Albertsons as well as like most natural chains like Mom's and Mother's Markets and Gelson's and Erewhon. So regionals, you can find us there, natural food stores. And then you can also find our tortillas now in the West Coast in Target, and soon to come on the East Coast in Mom's Markets. And you can also buy all of our products online. We ship everywhere in the country, and that's at livepacha.com. And actually there's a code for the listeners, so you can use the code WILDPARTY20 to take 20% off your first order. And yeah.
Wow, thank you so much. That was so nice of you guys. First of all, I mean, I knew about, being available online. I did not realize you had such great market penetration. That is impressive, and congratulations. You are in like every single store around me. But then again, I live in West Hollywood, so there's literally every single store around me. But I love it that you're hitting all of not only what we call like the healthier stores, like people always assume like Whole Foods and Sprouts are healthier. Sometimes maybe they are. But I do love it that you're also getting into markets like Target, because I really feel like you're going to reach a bigger audience that way too, of people who are trying to use what we call the all-in-one stores, for their shopping experience, to be able to really introduce them to maybe a healthier way of life. Because, it just starts with one small thing, and then you could really start looking at the rest of your life and be like, wow, this bread is great. Maybe also I could upgrade the rest of my pantry as well. So I think you're definitely doing a world of good. So I think you're on the right path, Maddie. So with that said, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your story. It has been so much fun talking to you and learning how you guys brought this again from idea to action, because there's always really great ideas out there. And I just want to make sure that people are really taking the time to be like, yeah, I could do that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Wild Party Podcast. If you're an entrepreneur or professional who would like to be on this podcast, please visit boomtownmarketing.com and click on podcast. We believe that every business has the potential to change the world for good, and we want to support our community to help make the world more ethical, compassionate, and sustainable for all future generations to come. And if you're looking to build your business, no matter what level you're at now, request your free marketing consultation at boomtownmarketing.com and click Get Started.